Well, thank you, Nick, for joining, and welcome everyone. I hope you're excited for the weekend. So we've got Nick Cook here with us today to talk about the Mawson Resources projects in Finland and Australia. So I'll just throw it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome everybody. It's a bit like a blast from the past sitting here looking at this list of names, having not worked in Australia for a few years. But I'll share my screen and we'll get on with it. And I've got the Q&A screen open here if people need to ask me questions, and I can answer them live maybe as we go, if they're not too hard. Okay, so let's get underway. If I can just hide the video pane. Hide this, hide the floating meeting controls. Okay, so thank you, Jessica. So she asked if I could have a chat about what we do, and it's fairly casual. So don't hesitate to stop, ask questions, and we'll have a little bit of a trip around the world. If this is going to work, I'll just have to push the right. So I couldn't think of anything to choose other than something boring like cold and hot. So I seem to have, in my career, kept out of the jungle, but ended up working in the desert and the cold parts of the world. So Mawson Resources, we're listed on the TSX. And here's that beautiful slide that we have to put in all cases, so you can read that at leisure. So we're up, our finished project is up on the Arctic Circle in northern Finland. And I was last up there earlier this year before PDAC, and for obvious reasons, I haven't been back. And you may or may not know that recently Mawson picked up quite a bit of ground in Victoria, and also has a right of first refusal over Nagambi's ground down there. So we're going to spend probably 15 minutes in each place, or maybe slightly longer in the finished part of the world. So I started working up there. I first went up there in 2012, and then we lived in Finland for a year and worked up in the north. So we covered all seasons up there, and unlike parts of the world like Queensland, they have 4 very distinct seasons. And some of you may or may not know anything about the Finnish language, and so there's some fairly large words, and I have not been allowed to call a prospect after Kauhanpessä Korkeakoaviikko, which actually means bear's den in the birch forest. But and there is a bear that lives there. But there are some pretty strange words in Australia, I thought, as well. And I've come across one of these. So while you're doodling or drinking and watching, you could think about what Australian word, and it could be a place, has 4 B's and 3 A's, 2 R's and 2 E's, and just 2 other letters. And we'll give you the answer at the end. This is just outside our office in Finland. It was taken at about 11 AM. Now, we don't get much daylight. You only see the sun for a couple of minutes in midwinter. And that's actually the reindeer processing factory next to us. So many of you will know something about Finland, that both Finland and Sweden in particular have been big producers of mining equipment, and Finland in particular has had a very, very long, and Sweden, a very long career of mining for hundreds and hundreds of years. Here we are on the Arctic Circle. If you can see my pen there, up to the north of us is Agnico's big operation, Gettila, which is well over 7 million ounces now. Boliden runs Kevitsa, a magmatic nickel system, and then next to it is Anglo's big discovery, Sakatti. And there's a few other players around and Kemi down to the southwest is a chrome mine in layered intrusions. Helsinki, the capital, is about 600 kilometres in a straight line to the south. And you often see this picture of Finland. It's slightly confusing because the bay, so the Swedish border starts in this position here and runs up, and then the Norwegian border comes over the top here and Russia's all down the eastern side. So Mawson's started working here in around 2008, 2009. And one of the things that's spectacular about this part of the world, even though it was written off for gold, is there is gold sticking out of the ground all over the place. And when I mean all over the place, I could probably take you to 100 outcrops with visible gold in a 10 by kilometre area. And this photo, for example, down the left, bottom left here, is a gold vein that a student on a field excursion found. And in the top right here, an early drill hole, ROM 11, 6 metres at 617 grams, with fairly obvious gold here. Now the system started in a pretty nuggety fashion, you could say. And when you can find this at the surface and cut it out with a piece of, with a diamond saw, you can get fairly excited. However, continuity can be an issue in some of these rocks. So what do we have up there? A bit of ground, quite a reasonable amount of ground. I mean, not in terms of Australian permit sizes, because you have to pay, when your ground is granted, you pay 20 euros a hectare, and that increases over the life of the project. So we have this area here. It's about 30 kilometres end to end down this way, and two main project areas. The initial one was Rompus here, which was the nuggety one, and then most of our work at the moment is focused across to the east. So the rocks, what are they? Well, Paleoproterozoic, so you should be thinking Tanami, Pine Creek, those sorts of places, Homestake, and the Trans-Hudson orogenic belt through northern Canada and down into Wyoming and South Dakota to Homestake in the US. So the rocks are very low grade down here on the Russian side in the Onega Basin. And the area that we're in is this little belt here called the Paleoproterozoic. And these rocks continue up through into Sweden and then across and stick out in a couple of places in Norway. One of the key things about this sequence is it contains the Great Oxidation Event. And not only that, so the first decent amount of oxygen on the planet, not only that, immediately after that is an era of big black shale accumulations, of which we have some in Australia. But down here in the Onega Basin, there's rocks up to 90% carbon. So the world's first fossil oil at about 2.05 or so million years ago. So there's a massive redox boundary within this package of rocks. Well, what did we find for a start? Well, went out after a great piece of project generation by our predecessors and discovered gold that you could pan from the surface. So here's that piece, that drill hole again. And if you zoom in and have a look at this, in this part of the world, there's quite a uranium association. In fact, the project was created for looking for uranium, and we bought it with numbers including 40,000 grams per tonne, so 4% gold in one sample. In fact, there was so much that we thought the French had got the comma and the decimal point mixed up. What is intriguing, just as a geological sideline here, is this uraninite is at least 1.95, if not 2.05 billion years old. And the gold here is 1.78. We've actually dated this, some of these other minerals associated with the gold. And so there's quite a contrast here, over 150 million years time gap between the formation of the uraninite and the gold. So it was really nuggety and tough going. And we drilled quite a few holes and drilled next to the hole that ROM 11 that had all the good stuff. There was just a 0.1 or so gold in the adjacent holes, just a couple of meters away. So we kept on exploring across the area and moved across to the east, and we found a tiny outcrop. And most people, when you look at the sample, you wouldn't believe what it had in it. It's chlorite, pyrrhotite, and sprays of these weird magnesian amphiboles. And the grab samples in there ran up to 80 grams per tonne. So pretty spectacular. And what's more, there's, you may as well say no exposure, but not much. Less than 1% exposure. In fact, it's probably 0.1%. And most of it's covered between about 5 to 8 metres of till. So lots of swampy country, pine and birch forest. And you spend quite a bit of time wandering around swamps rather than through them to actually get places. Unless, of course, you're in winter, where you have the ability to go straight across them. This is a standard drill setup in this part of the world. For part of the world, we have to collect all the cuttings for part of the project. And so there's a cuttings machine, water recirculation machine, the drill rig without its mast up, and then various tracked vehicles and ski-doos for support. So we drilled over a couple of winter seasons with large drill rigs. We initially started with a 25mm handheld Winky, and then we modified it, got a JKS 4M or whatever it's called, and modified that and managed to drill up to 150 metres with 25mm core. And then we got permitted to use large rigs. And we got our first resource. And that resource was under 500,000 ounces unconstrained, unconstrained rather, so 480 unconstrained. And what we've been doing since this December 2018, we've drilled another 29 kilometres into this, and we hope to increase the size of this resource and publish the resource at the start of Q3, so in July or August this year. And if you go to our website, you will see recent publications on some of those intersections. Excuse me. So we have huge amounts of data here at all scales. One of the things about working in Finland is the spectacular data sets, both geophysical data sets and till geochemistry. And then we've filled in on those. And the area that we're going to be looking at a little bit more is across here in the east. And these are +5 gram intercepts projected here onto this mag image. There's also EM here, so there's conductive plates associated with the pyrrhotite that hosts the gold. And lots of till data here. I've just shown the anomalous ones, but as you can see from here, there are plenty of other targets to go for other than the 3 here called Raya, Palocus and South Palocus that we've actually produced the first resource. Lots and lots of boulders. There's 50 or 60 boulders down here that we haven't really found the source of yet, with gold up to the 500-600 gram sort of mark. So it's a spectacular place for exploration, that's for sure. And you say, well, you got a few results. These are the sorts of things that we see. So this system here, just to go back to this, Raya here is this, it's dipping or plunging 34 degrees off to the north-northwest. So in long section, this is what the drill intersections look like. And the day you return 33 metres at 9 grams, you're pretty happy. This is 9.7 gold equivalent. That was when cobalt was about 600, was about twice the current price. So still 33 metres at 8 grams of gold. So you'll see we mention cobalt a lot here, but it really is a gold project with a kicker from gold, from the cobalt in terms of maybe 10% of the value at the moment. But in terms of the politics of this part of the world, especially with a trend towards electrification and battery metals, there's, the cobalt gives a really strong social push to the project. So you might want to see a couple of rocks. This is some spectacular drill core from Palocus prospect. Lots and lots of pyrrhotite here. This other slightly pinkier one here is all cobaltite. This rock here is 1.4% cobalt and some chalcopyrite through here. Now, what we do find is that the gold and cobalt grades are not necessarily 100% related. It appears that the cobalt minerals are actually introduced into the and are foliated, whereas the gold appears to be, and it's so often the case with gold, of course, looks quite late. And I want to bring your attention back to this, because if you look through here, you can see all these weird magnetic lows. And down here, this one, for example, is where this prospect daylights just below the till. And that's actually reverse remnant magnetism from pyrrhotite. So the pyrrhotite was actually cooked after all the folding. These are polydeformed amphibolite facies rocks with retrograde overprint associated with the gold. And we can show off a few results. Spectacular. And you can see there's significant thicknesses and grades across the project. So continues to be exciting, and it's one of these projects wherever we drill, we seem to keeping on getting good results, which is always a good sign in an advanced or advancing exploration project. So what are we up to? Resource update plan for Q3. We're looking to develop more prospects into resource status and build the remaining resources. So we'll be drilling there during the summer in the areas we can get to. And then we will keep on trying to turn more of our prospects with good grades into resource status as we go along. Okay. There's no fences in our part of the world. These animals wander around all over the place. So you see reindeer everywhere. And at some times of the year, they're most common on the road, keeping away from the mosquitoes. So Jessica's just said, if you've got any questions, put up your hands, ask a question, we'll answer them. So Victoria, you might consider us it unusual that we go to this part of the world, but Mike, the CEO who's online, and myself love Victoria for obvious reasons. And we've both worked there some moons ago, and Mike also held quite a bit of ground there in predecessors to Mawson some years ago. And in fact, was probably an advanced thinker of how some of these systems work before we really knew. So what's spectacular about Victoria at the moment? Well, it's pretty obvious, Fosterville really. And it is a huge boom. So there was the early boom with all the nuggety, vein control material, all near surface. And now the third expansion, and probably, well, in terms of our business, pretty exciting. So you'll know that lots of limits to how the early guys worked. So most things were down to just 200 feet. And there are lots, if you go across the Victorian prospects, there's lots of them that say 20 to 30,000 ounces were taken out. But not much has been done in Victoria since then, with the exception of a few spectacular examples. So Victoria was formerly viewed as, nuggety, hard going, refractory. So refractory problems with arsenopyrite. And Victoria wasn't really regarded either as a wonderful jurisdiction. We're not sure whether it's got better or whether or not the rest of the world has caught up and now we just feel that that's not the norm. So a question about the metallurgy, the gold refractory. So just casting back to Finland, all of the gold there that we've found so far is all free, and the metallurgy looks pretty good. So we're involved in metallurgy at the moment. So it varies in grain size, but so far we haven't found any of the gold being held by other sulfides. So thanks, Roderick, for that. So where are we going? Under other prospects and doing some more regional exploration in our new tenements. There's been, I imagine lots of people who work in this part of the world have seen these two great papers, but there's been two really good contributions this year alone, never mind all the work that's been done leading up to this. But Stefan Volger's PhD work and Chris Voisey have all been producing great work that are helping us understand what might be going on in this part of the world. Fosterville. Now, there's a whole lot of exploration geologists out there who would like to find something like this. It's pretty spectacular, and I don't know anybody who starts thinking they're going to run at 10 grams and then ends up at 30 with a low cost base. Could be anything other than super excited. So you realise what was at the surface in these systems and what it looked like, and then what they've found since with a bit of great exploration and deep drilling and thinking about how the alteration systems work. So a question always is, I suppose in Victoria, how far eastward should we go? Now, there's always should be some association with geologists and wine, I believe. So there are vineyards close by, and that's always a good thing. And interesting comments about how far east you could go, because of course, across the Tasman is Reefton globe system. And this is actually the same age and pretty much the same process. In fact, alarmingly similar to what we see in Victoria. So when you look at those Victorian rocks, you should realise that they do continue a long way to the east. So I wouldn't be getting rid of too many of the ideas about how far east to go in Victoria when you look at some of this material. And this was, I don't know if any of you know Andrew Allabone, but those guys published this early this year. So where are we? In Victoria. Here's Fosterville. We've got 3 bits of ground here in our own right and have a first right of refusal over Nagambi's ground. So the key thing is here, these dots, these large yellow dots, are all of these shallow orogenic or epizonal Fosterville style systems. And there's 2 types. Remember, there's 2 in general. The fantastic 440 event, which John Holliday and other people know all about on the New South Wales side, that Cadia and those things. So there was a big event at that stage, and then this second shallower event, 370 to 380 million years. And just going in a little closer, there's this tender ground that there's lots and lots of interest over at the moment. And we'll see what happens with that. It's been held off a little with the COVID-19 area, but we have first right of refusal over this, all of this ground out here around Nagambi and out to the north of Nagambi. And then we've got Sunday Creek, also was known as Clonbinane, Redcastle and Doctor's Gully held in our own right. So what are we after? Well, it's pretty obvious, really. We're quite close to Redcastle, quite close to Fosterville. So one of our projects has many similarities in terms of structure here. There's this idea that the antimony and gold is sourced from this block that you can see in the seismics, known as the Selwyn block. And we're going to continue exploring and look at the upside here. And to give you an idea what's already there, here's the Sunday Creek or Clonbinane area, surprisingly close to Melbourne. Big dike with a bend in it, goes from more than 11 kilometres across the ground. And if you look at the drill results here, there's some pretty spectacular numbers come out of here. And some of it sure in the weathered zone, and others here down below the weathered zone into relatively fresh rock. And we look forward to, or I look forward to getting out of New South Wales and actually looking at some diamond drill core here as soon as possible. I think I'm allowed into Victoria now, so look forward to looking at that and trying to work out a little bit more. But there is, remember, 11 kilometres of mineralised dike and country rock across this piece of ground alone in Sunday Creek. I'll leave you to read this. You guys are good as reading as I am, and this will be published somewhere or other. It'll probably end up on our website as well if people are interested. So the key things: most of the gold's already been from the mesozonal system, and it was mostly the old timers that did that. And there's very little drilling underneath that, especially with the new thoughts about places like Fosterville. And everybody now obviously thinks about how we might look differently for those systems. And we'll be focusing on the known prospects and developing new regional targets with a combination of the geochemistry, geophysics, and drilling. And I'll come to that question on the deleterious elements with the gold in just a sec. Okay, how are we going for time? 5:40. So thank you very much indeed. And I'm not sure whether any of you got the, I don't see any hints up here for the answer to the trivia question. Tabarabaran, which is 4 Bs and 3 As and 2 Es. I will jump out of here and ask questions. So that was a casual flick through our 2 projects across Finland and Victoria. Jessica.
Thank you so much. That was great. Everyone's welcome to jump off mute and yeah, have a drink, ask questions. So yeah, Kim does have one when you've got a second. But
Yep.
yeah, everyone more than welcome to have a chat and get amongst it. I hope you enjoyed the talk. So thanks again, Nick, for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
So